not sleepwalking into this Orwellian state, but hurtling towards it in a comatose state, then we will live in a global fascist state within 15 years. And I'm probably being optimistic with the 15. However, at the same time this is happening, this awakening is going on. Now, I understand why people don't realize the scale of the awakening, because, if it's not in the mainstream media, to most people it doesn't exist.
Yes.
And for the mainstream media to actually see something that's outside of its tiny, tiny pea-sized bubble that it covers, it has to be 10 foot high with neon lights. But I can tell you, mate, from traveling to 45 countries now around the world, from the early 1990s, I've seen it in every country.
Yes.
And it's exponential. Because it doesn't get in the mainstream, the scale of it is not understood. It is enormous.
But it's not just that the mainstream's dumb. They're artificially not reporting on our victories.
Exactly. But the thing is that what we need now to do is to harness this awakening into a unified, if you feel like, force, which will cease to cooperate with its own enslavement. Because this is the key point. When people say, oh, no, they're all powerful. No, they're not all powerful. The power they use to control us is the power we give away.
That's right.
All the time.
That's right.
Now, if we... I'll tell you a quick story. I had a friend years ago. He was a famous comedian in Britain called Larry Grayson. And I went to his funeral, and another comedian told this story that Larry Grayson had told to him about an experience he had. And Larry Grayson, in the days of the music hall and stuff like that, the last vestiges of it, he was in this musical show. It was an all-male show, and he played the woman in it. That's kind of what he did. And at the end of the show, he said, he dressed up as Britannia, and all the men came on dressed as sailors and got on top of each other's shoulders and formed a pyramid appropriately. And they were doing it to this song, Rule Britannia, and all this rubbish.
Stay there. I want to hear it on the other side.
Okay,
Royal, but
I'll finish then.
Yeah, we got to finish on the other side of this break. Final segment with David Icke. Straight ahead, ladies and gentlemen. We're really appreciative of him coming on with us, DavidIcke.com. I'm Alex Jones. Truth Rising is going to be released in the next few hours at Infowars.com. Tim, John, Graham, Joe, John, and others. We're going to take some of your phone calls. We have a quick question for David Icke. He's with us for this segment, and then that's it. He's agreed to come back on the next few months. He's running for Parliament in England to expose the shell operation that is going on over there. And heard his evidence. There's definitely no doubt about that. Learn more at DavidIcke.com. Again, your phone call is just a moment. David, you were finishing up to a famous comedian, friend of yours. They're doing this Hail Britannia with them in the shape of a pyramid. Go ahead.
Yeah, and Rule Britannia was, building to the end, and they all formed a pyramid on the stage. And Larry Grayson came out dressed as Britannia and was manhandled up to the top of the pyramid for the big finish. And he said that one night there was a guy in the bottom left-hand corner of the pyramid who'd started to get a cough. And this night, his cough got worse, and it coughed so much that he could no longer stand in the pyramid. And down came the pyramid, and Larry Grayson, symbolic of this elite on the top of the pyramid, ended up in row 2. And all that it had taken was not, someone... fighting at the top against Britannia symbolically, but someone who got a cough and walked away at the bottom of the pyramid, because the bottom of the pyramid holds the top of the pyramid up there. And when we stop cooperating with our own enslavement, because there are billions of us who are being enslaved, there's a handful at the peak of the peak of the peak who are orchestrating the enslavement in full awareness. It's all over, and they know that. They're terrified.
Do you know what that is? That's a true Yertle the Turtle story.
Yeah. Do you remember that movie, The Bug's Life, the animated movie?
And he says if just one of these ants, starts standing up, they can push us aside. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, if they ever find out that we depend on them and not the other way around, then our way of life is over. And that's precisely what we face here. We are the ones with the power, and they are the ones who are terrified of us finding that out. And that's why there's been this massive, constant campaign of suppression of knowledge and awareness to keep us in a smaller box than they're in. We're getting out of it. More and more people are. And it's going to be a very, very interesting few years as the irresistible force which is meets the immovable object which isn't.
David, what do you think about the French students in England stabbed hundreds of times apiece, ritualistically tortured, biological weapons type students, and we have all these other microbiologists and engineers being murdered all over the world? What do you think's going on behind that?
Well, I've just seen that because I've been out with the election all day. I've just seen that on the news tonight. What they're doing in every area of our lives, because we are now going towards this crunch point of awakening and all the rest of it, and they are desperate to get this this network of control in place. What they want, in essentially, is for the cell door to click shut before enough people have realized they're even in a cell. So they're upping the ante all over the place now. I mean, we are having in this country the most incredible number of young people. Interestingly, often they are either famous in terms of one was in a movie, a Harry Potter movie that's coming out, and others are connected to famous people who are being stabbed to death. Now, this is like so many, it's unbelievable. And it's upping the ante of fear so that they can impose the solutions, which are this Orwellian state control. And so we have to now start being aware, and not just aware, but have the courage not to fall for it, and to see that it's there to enslave us and not to protect us. And this is why information is the key. When people understand the game, then the game loses control over them. It's keeping the game from people that all this suppression has been about.
I'm reading that these guys that got killed, butchered in a satanic-style torture ritual, were studying parasites jumping between dog and cat fetuses. Man, I tell you, a bunch of the biological weapons guys in the U.S. were murdered ritualistically. The first one, when it all started, was in Virginia. Remember, they tortured him and carved a pentagram in his back?
Yeah. The biotech industry, with Monsanto, of course, prime among them, are a satanic. They're one of the most dark of all the cartels. And they are far more powerful within this network than people realize.
Well, Rumsfeld headed them. He heads every company that does particularly evil stuff. Why is that?
Well, because he's evil. I mean, I don't use the word evil very much. I think it's overused. But if you take it as the opposite of live, spelt backwards, the opposite of life, then evil is very appropriate with him. I mean, he was the man that brought aspartame.
Oh, my God.
Brain suppressant and brain destroyer.
And he gave the reactors in North Korea. Listen to this. Mr. Bonomo was studying a parasite which can spread from cats to human fetuses. See, it's a kill human weapon. Mr. Frez's research was into bacteria which create ethanol for use as fuel. Boy, these go ahead.
We've had so many scientists at the cutting edge of their profession in these very areas you're talking about who have been taken out over the years. I mean, there was even a book written about them at one point. So many were taken out, and they would be eating their meal in London. They would get up from it, drive to Bristol, which is a decent drive, where they had no family connections. They'd jump off the big suspension bridge there. There's one after the other that came from the same office.
And of course, all the surveillance cameras can never catch anything because they always turn off.
Well, we managed to have a situation where a Brazilian was shot 8 times, 7 times in the head while being held down at close range, and of course the surveillance pictures didn't come out. Obviously, it wasn't working, mate.
Listen to this: Frenchman killed in London was stabbed.